A quick way that you can add some visual interest to your design is by adding some textures. Right now, what we see on this page is everything is graphic and flat. There are no differences in the texture. So I want to try adding something that could make this pop a little bit more. This is supposed to be a picture frame. And inside the picture frame, I want to show that there's a painting. It doesn't necessarily have to have anything on it. I'm actually going to just have a blank canvas. So what I'm going to do is go to Google Images, and I'm going to search canvas texture. And I'm going to hit white because I'm looking for something that's white. And I'm going to look for something that's really unobtrusive. I think this first one is perfectly good, so I'm going to hit copy. And I'm just going to paste it directly into InDesign. I pasted on the blue layer. You can tell because the outline is blue. I just want to point out, if this is your first time using InDesign, this might be a little confusing. The object that you have here, you have this bounding box. This is easier to see if we're not in display mode. But you have a bounding box. That's the blue thing, and that's what shows up in the picture. And then you have the picture. You can kind of think of it as a picture frame versus the picture itself. But we want to, if you want to resize it, you can either resize the picture itself or you can resize the bounding box without really changing the picture at all. So right now I haven't changed the picture. This orange shows what the picture actually looks like, and the blue is just what's showing. So that's just something to note if this is your first time here. I don't actually need to be resizing this. Instead, what I can do is just drag it underneath. And now if we go to preview mode, I think that looks a little bit more interesting. It gives the picture a little bit more depth. I think we could also probably do that with the picture frame itself, but I'm going to explore that a little bit later. What if we wanted to add texture to the whole document, right? Like this is really a little bit flat. The idea here of this particular design was that I wanted it to have the illusion of like fading into the background because mysteries can feel kind of elusive, so I wanted the text to feel elusive. And what I'm going to do to kind of capture this more is I'm going to get the texture of crumpled paper. I find that to be a really great texture. Now I'm just going to look for one that's not so crumpled that you can't really see underneath it, but I'm going to, and I want to filter for a large picture because I'm trying to cover the whole document. I like this one, I think, but you know what, this one has a watermark, so that's no good. We're trying to find one that does not have a watermark. Here, this one. Okay, so I'm going to hit copy image. I'm going to paste it in. And now I'm going to rotate this so that way it's the same size, the same orientation of my page. I'm going to resize this by holding down Shift and Command. Shift will make it so that way the picture and the bounding box resize together. And Command, well, actually that's not true. Command makes it so that way they resize together, and Shift will constrain the proportions. Now instead of dragging this underneath, because then we won't be able to see it, what I'm going to do is change the blending mode. Blending mode can be found under opacity, so if you click opacity, you get all of these options to change how the light shows through the picture. This is really more of a Photoshop thing, but it is also in InDesign. And all of these options do usually give you some pretty cool different effects. Right now we only have black and white. This is pretty cool. I like that quite a lot. But I think that multiply is what gives the best effect for the design that I'm going for. Now I also want to show you what happens, and I'm lightening the document a little bit. I want to show you what happens when I make the rectangle a color. Right now I'm still on the gray phase where everything is just gray. So we're just testing values, and we're not really seeing how the color looks, but I want to show you what happens when we actually do add color to this. It will be really cool. So what I'm going to do is I just selected that color. I hit fill so that way I can put my color in. I've actually already saved the color that I want to use to my swatches. But if I, just to show you how it is done, I can also just type in my hex code. So I double clicked and now I'm going to type in my hex code. It's 4A0D3D. Okay, and now that I have it, I'm going to add the CMYK swatch. Okay. Now that I have this, I can take the tint down to what it was. Now we can see how the color looks with the texture. And I'm also going to see it's the same thing as it is over there. Now once I recolor it using a swatch, it retains the same values that I had already assigned to it. Once we add the color, we can start looking to see, not everything's the same. Once you add color, you might want to make something darker. The idea here is actually to have things blend in, but I also want my text to be readable. So just because it is part of the point, I do need to balance making it readable with making it on theme. I'm also just going to drag, what just happened? I'm going to drag this up so that way I don't have to keep scrolling. And I think that this looks good, but it's too hard to read, and ultimately a book cover does need to be readable, so I'm going to make this a little bit lighter. A little darker. Let's try to keep the balance. There we go, and I think that's a pretty happy medium. I bumped it up by 5. There we go. And that's how adding texture kind of changed the level of depth of this picture. Let's just look at it with and without. So here, this is, it's an interesting text alignment. I think it's pretty good. I just want to point out that the works is aligned to this H is aligned to this E, the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and what you're going to find in the book is aligned to this L. So all of the title, the text, it's all interconnected, but this still does look a little bit underwhelming and plain, and that's because everything's so flat. We can make this a really quick and easy high impact design just by adding this texture. If we wanted, we can even add the texture on top of the words, so that way the words also become textured, and that's pretty cool too. So that's how you can add textures to your InDesign documents to elevate the design that you're working on. And just to remind you, if you want to just show some of the texture, you can move the bounding box, which is what I did over here. Well, really what I did here was layer it underneath, but I've layered it underneath, but we can also have moved the bounding box so that way it's not showing up on top of things that we don't want it to show up on.